It's really not about building the most powerful AI company. I have plenty of friends who are doing this. So we can work that out between them. I'm trying to figure out how to make it all the gifts that we're getting from the labs maximally valuable to people I really care about.
This attitude of helping the world fulfill its desires and its dreams, I think this is exactly the attitude we would want in the company that ends up becoming most powerful.
Welcome to the Darby Mills series, Intrepid Pioneers of the Next Economy, featuring discussions with entrepreneurs at the forefront of deploying machine intelligence and brainstorming sessions about where the technology may go at the limit.
Welcome to the Darby Mills series, Intrepid Pioneers of the Next Economy. I'm Ajay Agarwal, co-founder and partner at Intrepid Growth Partners, and today we focus on the intersection of machine intelligence and online commerce. Joining me for this conversation is the most successful entrepreneur in Canadian history, and that's Toby Lütke, CEO of Shopify. I'm here with my four collaborators, Rich Sutton of the University of Alberta, who pioneered reinforcement learning, Senthil Mullainathan, who uses machine learning to better understand human decision-making, Niamh Gavin, an applied AI scientist who works on foundation models, and Suzanne Gildert, the founder CEO of Nirvanic, who is an expert in the area of machine intelligence, quantum computing, and robotics. Rich, Senthil, Niamh, and Suzanne are all Intrepid advisors. So today's episode, we focus on the intersection between AI and e-commerce. And I think what's so compelling about this session is the scale of the business. That Shopify is operating about close to 6 million storefronts, and that number is growing every day. Close to 1 billion customers that are purchasing about $30 billion a month in gross merchandise value, transacting on the platform. And so all of that creates scale, which generates data, which is the essence for how machine intelligence learns. And so deploying AIs into a workflow that's operating at that scale is very significant and gives us a lot to talk about. So let's just begin with, for listeners who might not be as familiar with just Shopify as a business, I'm just going to ask you to describe the scale of the business, because in my view, what you're going to hear about today, this year in Time Magazine, they had these sort of architects of AI as the cover of, and I suspect that down the road, there will be a front cover of Time will be the most significant commercial applications of machine intelligence. And the ones that you're going to hear about today, in my view, will be a contender for that. And part of that's because of the scale of what Toby's going to tell us about. And the other thing, just to set the table here, last week I spoke with a woman who Senthil and I know named Susan Athey, who used to be the chief economist at the Department of Justice. And she's been very focused on the impact of AI and power. And the idea here being that to what extent is machine intelligence going to further amplify the power of very large companies. And there's a very good argument here for scale economies. And one of the interesting things about Shopify is that this is a counterexample of where they're using machine intelligence to, in fact, give a significant boost to smaller companies. And so as you listen to the description of the size of Shopify, on the one hand, think about like the size of the company itself, but on the other hand, the number of merchants that are empowered by this platform. So Toby, welcome. And if you could just give an overview of the size of the business.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look, like Canada is a proudly Canadian company. We started here 20 years ago. It's now powering millions of merchants. We sort of stopped giving the sort of play-by-play updates because they tend to become permanent artifacts of the internet if we give specific numbers. And then I get numbers from very long ago quoted all the time, and it's just like all mumbles together. So ever since we've gone past 2 million, we just have been saying millions. Even every one of these small, like our merchant is a small business. It's usually the websites you buy from, then you shop online. If you purchase something on the web, and it wasn't from Amazon, and you liked the experience, it was very likely a Shopify store, recognizably often through these purple buy buttons and the shop logo. And so, what can I say? It's gotten gratifyingly big. It's if you put millions of small things together, you end up with a very, very, very large thing, and sort of the original internet scaling laws. And we are excited about the company because it's a little bit of a implementation of the vision that I think all of us here likely had for the internet, sort of in the emergence of the internet during the 90s and early 2000s, in as much as that it's almost a implementation of this idea that in the future, everyone would have their own website and would self-actualize and share. And there was, blogs for a moment. And then, one by one, these things sort of got picked apart into different places and, are much more amazing than anything we could have imagined. But we kind of nailed it with online stores because they are these little outposts of sovereignty for customers. It's one of the very few things you can own on the internet is your website, your design, your brand. And so, altogether, the size of this makes up to be about 10% of all of commerce. And in the United States, it's very international. We have customers in 175 countries, and we during the sort of peak moments of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is an event we celebrate on behalf of all these entrepreneurs. It peaks up to 20, 30. It's hard to get the exact numbers, but it's like a significant chunk of the internet, and a significant chunk of the internet's traffic goes to Shopify stores.
Okay, so the format that we're going to follow here is, they last week announced this winter edition, which was effectively like just an orgy of new AIs on everything. And there's so many, it's overwhelming. So what we're doing today is we're just picking three. We're picking three things three very specific applications that I think are a good reflection of the power of the technology in their setting. And so we'll do one at a time, just clarification of how it works. And then we will do a macro, where does this go at the limit? So the first one is called SimGym.
Think about playing a sport. A gym is where you go to work out so you can do well at that sport when you go on the playing field. That is what this is, okay? And when we say simulator, it's because we know a lot of folks, we just talked about launching with confidence in the one above, about A/B testing and rollouts and launching with confidence using rollouts. But SimGym allows you to launch with confidence when you don't quite have potentially the traffic, or you don't really want to test with real humans, real consumers. We said, okay, what are we going to do for those people? Because we are the entrepreneurship company. We help everybody grow. And a lot of those people don't have traffic yet. We took all of our knowledge across the decades of building online stores, and we built AI shoppers that represent what we see real humans do.
And then we said, that. So the craziest thing about it is that we are actually what we do is we are creating simulated versions of the people that are like ones that are usually browsing on your particular store. Basically, with this system, we can take your rollouts and simulate them how to the best knowledge of AI based on the personas of people who are visiting you, actually clicking around on the store, on the design changes, and looking at whatever metrics you're going for, and predict the future. And this is delivering a thing that is just kind of blowing our minds because we found it to be extremely accurate for something that is for what it is. And again, an A/B test is something that is super good when you're when I don't know, when you're Fashion Nova, you can run A/B tests in a couple of minutes given the traffic you have. If you're starting, it's going to take sometimes, for real statistical relevance on a small detail chain, months, right? No, it doesn't. No, you can just go and simulate it, and that is a game changer. We're not aware of anyone having done this or having used AI in this way. It's an incredible breakthrough from our teams and in our machine learning labs. the term is sufficiently nerdy. Gyms are the environments that reinforcement learning happens in. And
that's the nerdy version.
And the basic idea here is AIs that are predicting, the behavior of customers, and the response of customers to things. And what's fascinating, it's not just like the average customer, but it's reflecting the response of the archetype of that merchant's customers. So we'll do clarification questions here. And Sendel, if you want to kick off this one, and we'll go Sendel, and then Neve, and then Suzanne and Rich.
So I guess my clarification question is very straightforward. What is the data backbone that allows you to get such personalized prediction for this particular business?
Yeah, so the data backbone is starts with the log files, So we do we have a transactional history. We see the just browsing behavior. With this, we can match to certain personas that we've established, like through this is fairly standard clustering there. And then also, due to deliveries, there's like demographics areas. So we pick from like tens of thousands of personas, like we sort of match through that, and then we go from there.
I guess part of it, I think I get that work stream. How do you think about your example with, Christmas coming up and 20% is fantastic? How do you think about baking in a macro component because, there's the store, there's the regions they buy from. Do you think about including that forecasting component, or are you thinking of it idiosyncratic?
Yeah, so I think what we so this is the next phase is like, let's get it out and figure out what is actually this is a completely new thing. What it allows people to do in the end of the day is to get to conviction faster with their testing. The core here is that A/B testing and these kind of rollouts that we are launching are just if you are small, which always is the thing that Shopify obsesses about. How can we help people to scale faster? Running an A/B test, getting it to really statistical significance, just takes a very long time. If you're Nike, you can basically run anything on your test on your website and get a result within the day. If you are not Nike, if you're very small and starting, it'll take so long that it's probably not worth doing, but it's extremely valuable. So we have found that we can get to a statistically relevant prediction quite quickly, and then we are seeing more. The correlation is quite high with the actual, of a counterfactual, which is exciting. And as I'm sure is being discussed, especially on these panels with here, is all of this gets back into an RL loop, which hopefully will help us hill climb the prediction quality further and further. What is fascinating, however, I should say, the simulation actually does do web browsing, right? So it's really at that level. It's so that you can test how many transactions do you lose to cookie banners is a question that I think a lot of people should ask themselves, and then afterwards have a conversation with their regulators if they happen to be in those kind of areas that require cookie banners. And putting some numbers for your particular business with your particular implementation is an excellent use case. And I think there's utility value beyond just is it perfect and will it be predictive? There's enough forecasting technology that will be able to work with regressors like Christmas shopping and so on. We could parameterize it. We have not so far though.
And Sendel, maybe you could just share a couple of sentences about what you're doing at MIT in the Bike Lab in terms of thinking about decision making. In my opening comment, I remarked that what Shopify is doing is it's the counterweight to this scale advantage that the large companies have. And so by doing the simulation, otherwise A/B testing is so powerful, but only large companies have enough data to exploit it. And they're giving this power to small companies.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you do. My parents ran a small business, not a web business. The web wasn't there around there. But what's striking, and there's so many studies about this around the world as well, how if you look at decision making, small business people have to make tons of decisions that are just insanely consequential, and which they just are not equipped with the data to make at some level. And it seems like you've got just an amazing capacity. That's what I was sort of asking, is the ability to deploy scale economies to artisanal producers. So you sort of get the benefits of scale and the benefits of small, because you can kind of bring to bear all of the scale, whether it be data. I think that's why I was kind of asking about forecasting. In some level, it can be my data, it can be the data in the world. Like you're kind of can be that intermediary, and you are to starting to do that and have done it on other dimensions, to sort of say, what are all the things I struggle to decide? Great. Here are all the places we can help. And so I'm very passionate about improving decision-making, and this just seems like an amazing vector for doing that.
Yeah, so Shopify, like this is not one of the free things. Now we want to go through them, but like we have integrated, like Shopify has like a Copilot thing called Sidekick integrated into the software. It is like Sidekick is an enormous successful company. Think about it. Like the people who are coming to us are like they're showing a lot of courage to put themselves out there. It's a very public thing to build a business, but they are very often quite scared of failure for very good reasons. You're defensive when you're putting yourself out there. It might be that starting a business was plan B for them, and that plan A has somehow come to an end. They may have lost their job in a or some reason, right? Therefore they probably also don't have a lot of money to invest. So they have no background in doing this, and so you're like Shopify is a company built for a customer base that is courageous, reaching for independence, reaching for glory, but has no money, is non-sophisticated, and is probably has very little time. And so Shopify is a product forged in these fires, right? And I think so. What Sidekick can already do is incredible. Like the amount of conversations that people are having, it's an amazing, massively retentive, massively integrated, and it can do agentic tasks for you. You can give it a CSV, and it builds you a little app that turns that CSV into an importer, and it's just it has all these features. And but that's it's cool to talk about features and SimGyms and so on. But what people actually are doing is like, hey, can you tell me anything that I can tell my friends tonight when we meet about that's going well? And it just it'll find something. And it's able to access benchmarking data and forecasting data. And we've actually been amazed because people often, upvote these things, and then we get to read the conversations and as part of looking if it's golden data set material. And it just finds these little facts. It's like, hey, you are more successful than 90% of other shops that started in the same week, which is wonderful thing to tell an entrepreneur. Because there's a lot of, it's free to sign up. There's lots of trials. There's lots of people playing around or just clicking around, So it's not a hugely consequential statement from a financial perspective, but it is something that's worth telling your friends on a Friday over drinks. So it's like there's a humanness to the AI world that's quite different. Software is very autistic. It's just never ends up talking in the language that humans actually the way I'm probably pretty autistic myself. So the way I talked to my friends myself about computers and what they can do and the empowerment I'm getting from them, it has never been their experience. In fact, it's quite the opposite. From their perspective, they often think, hey, this AI stuff is amazing because you guys fixed the computer. They finally do the stuff that you always talked about for the last 20 years and I couldn't see, right? And so we see these effects hit and this is the things I'm personally just incredibly excited about. And so, I see Shopify as a company that's kind of a bridge. We are on one side is the country of incredible research and all of you publishing papers and improving state of the art, or the various lessons that we have to learn. And, just we are on the other side and making these sorties in the world of the papers and the technology world and, the global network of commerce, and just finding these morsels of incredible value and trying to bring them back to entrepreneurship land where people are trying to self-actualize. And so this is an incredibly interesting time. And Editions is really us saying, hey, here's Shopify releases 2 editions a year. We are sort of mapping this to the fashion world, which has new collections twice a year. And so we are, right now it's just AI time because that's where all the value is, and it's incredibly valuable. So sorry for the unscheduled proviso. I'm just extremely passionate about it. And I do really want to also have people who are doing the thankless and complex postdoc work in the labs hear that how it's just so valued on the other side in industry. There's millions of people having conversations. I say one more thing about Sidekick. We had a problem for a couple of hours in last week, and with a completely unrelated login system. And our Sidekick system was just kind of hitting it too hard while it had problems, and we had to take it out. So for about an hour, we didn't have Sidekick on Shopify. And there was we've never gotten so many emails about something. People basically send us messages saying, hey, my favorite, my employee of the month didn't show up. It's to work. And someone wrote an obituary for Sidekick. It's just people were they told us we murdered, or held hostage their favorite colleague. So it's quite lovely on this level. So.
You have a good product when people complain when it's taken away, and it's how much will they pay to have it back? So kudos there. Going back to SimGym, I think the difference here versus the current flood of eval gyms, RL environments, time series, etc., is it's based on millions and billions of real world usage, not synthetic data, because you're super fortunate to have this full end-to-end real RL environment, which most of the even frontier labs lack. So whilst kind of creating these synthetic customers was hot earlier in the year, few actually made it reality, and especially on an N of 1, like merchant and user level. And so what's amazing is you've enabled SimGym to not only do A/B testing, but the thing that's even more mind-blowing is preferences via these optimized focus groups. And the in terms of clarifying question, that's super expensive, both on a storage and simulation basis. So is your aim for now just to store everything, lean into it and rely on the costs rapidly decreasing over time? Or have you found a hack that the others aren't aware of?
No, it is quite expensive to run. So it's you're quite right there. Via all the usual optimizations apply. There's distillation is load bearing here to make it at all tractable, and it's not the cheapest. So we are in a rollout, and everything's compute limited, right? I feel like I'm getting a front row seat to what everyone else's last 3 years looked like in terms of conversations with various inference capacity and so on. So it's all good. We don't charge. We've so far never charged anything for Sidekick or so. It's all built in because, again, if people use it to build bigger businesses, our business model is fully aligned with our customers. We take a tiny little percentage that we're getting through payments and these kind of things and the monthly fees. And so we figured it's all kind of works out. And that's another nice thing is we don't have to think about the monetization and the margins to the same degree that maybe others do. And so far, the token costs just also have been coming down so enormously that we feel even connecting the curves here, it'll probably work out to bring this to higher, to full rollout. But yeah, I'm if we do contributions to the world of research, it's going to be by validating sort of in the AI ideas. I don't think we have broken, we have not broken attention mechanism or something like this and found another gear here. That's probably not the thing to look at for us.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And just to make sure that listeners sort of fully got that point, because I don't want it to get lost, is that so many AI companies are struggling with pricing. So in other words, they generate some prediction for a thing, and then they sell their prediction, and nobody knows what to pay for a prediction. So imagine you're building an AI, let's say that in drug discovery, that predicts like binding efficacy, which molecules most effectively bind to which proteins, and then you try and sell that to pharma. Pharma says that's valuable, but they have no idea what to pay for that prediction. There's no sort of market for prediction of that kind. Shopify's giving this as a service to their merchants. And the idea is that they will benefit if it increases the thing that merchants care about, which is their sales. And so it's very aligned, and the pricing or the value of the AI is just being absorbed in the existing business model because of such tight alignment. Suzanne, over to you.
So I want to take the conversation in a slightly different direction and maybe ask a bit more of a sci-fi question about the future of all this. So what we've seen on social media over the last decade or so is that where we were originally is the situation you guys are in now, where it's this beautiful ecosystem. You've got all these lovely boutique kind of artisan small businesses that are now, getting out there, getting their products to market. And it's kind of in this like beautiful phase. But that was like the way things like, social media started, where everyone got a voice, and it was really nice. And what happened over time was, with the invention of AI tools, we started to see more and more auto-generated content, which was engagement farming, and all this stuff started happening. And then it's just kind of taken over the whole system. And I guess my question to you is, are you worried about, or have you even seen already any signs of automated store production, where there are just fully automated pipelines now where stores are being set up and created in large numbers by AIs? Maybe they're drop shipping type systems. And this is now starting to push out these kind of small business owners that are actual people. Maybe you might call it shop slop, something like that. Are you seeing any of this now, or is this just total sci-fi that's not happening?
I feel like this is, our world is a little bit different here, because you have two governors in the system. One of them is like, at some point, atoms have to be assembled into a final product, and in order to do this, someone has to part with money, which is a rather risk resource, right? So like, you don't have those zero marginal copying of generation of tokens that sort of exists to cause some of these effects there in the same way. In fact, a purchasing transaction is actually a vote for usually everything that is behind that, right? Like, you're not, every time you purchase something, you're voting for the product existing, and the business behind it existing, the supply chain that created it, and so on and so on. In that way, this has always been a tension, right? Like, if Shein, for instance, and like places like this are fundamentally going around and looking what works in sort of the entrepreneurial space, and then just kind of creating shop slop. I mean, like, kind of like that. That's a good term. I'm gonna run with that. And you know what? That is okay. It's not wouldn't be my choice of what to spend my time on all day to enable it, but like, it's also, it plays a role for, usually the people who purchase this would potentially never have purchased some of these kind of things. So honestly, this is all kind of exists. I think the highly automated cases are going, like, we sort of starting to see them. It'll be a factor, because some areas like swag creation also really lends itself, also just like event-based quick stores for like, just we'll see it. And all of this is entrepreneurial, and all of this is like, if someone purchases, then it was valuable. It's kind of its own, like it has its own eval built in a way for of merit. And so that's the interesting part of our little niche here.
Suzanne, we will put a trademark on Shop Slop, and it originated right here on the Darby Mill podcast. Rich, over to you.
Well, this all is really cool, but I'm just amazed that it can work, because let's say you want to do an 8-year store, and you want to do an A/B test on 2 different, say, websites that you're laying out, and you're proposing the two because they both seem plausible to you, and then you can send those out and get feedback from simulated customers. How does that work, and how does it actually do better than a shop owner's intuitive judgment of what might be appealing? How do you train them? What do the simulated customers see? Do they see the layout as a picture, and then they click?
It's literally, so it's parameterized, like essentially agents arriving really to the website, doing the vision model browser use loop, and so they are scrolling, they are looking at pictures, and they are not going to navigate to the new product that you would like to test in your market if that's not happens to, again, you're essentially running a what's it called, a Monte Carlo simulation through that's parameterized to correspond to the to the audience that usually browses around, to the best of your store, to the best of our ability. So, it is delightful that it actually produces results worth having, but it does, and that's the remarkable. That's really a remarkable thing. I have to say, I was very skeptical of this effort. I now I'm like, this is like, I'm looking very, very clever here because we were shipping an excellently valuable thing. Initially I was extremely skeptical that we would be able to actually get better than coin toss results on this. I suppose it just turns out when you're training on the average of output of the internet and the average human output, that for the purposes of essentially a focus group, you have a lot of significant generalizations in the base models, and then again, by us being able to turn it into structural data based on observed ground truth on logging and demographics of the transactions and so on, it just combines into something quite worth doing.
Rich, in some sense, don't you think, in many of the companies that we've spoken with on this podcast, they're building AIs that they then sell to companies that are an input to some process that company is doing. Think about the factories episode, where they were making predictions on some inputs into a factory operation, and then the factory had to operate that thing, and then it would produce the thing, and then it would ship the thing, and then and when we were talking about an end-to-end RL system, we always had to think about, well, what's the goal and what's the end goal, and then if we work backwards, what are intermediate goals, proxies. Don't you think in this setting that one of the things that's so beautiful is they have the data for the end goal, which is the sale? And so they've got the ground truth for in other words, so many examples we've looked at, there's quite a distance between the thing that AI company is doing and the ultimate goal. What's your thinking here in terms of, in my view, it just seems like there's so much goal data.
Yeah, you're right. This is special about the shopping application, and I guess Shopify has access to all the data and what's sold by all the merchants. And so, yeah, for once, we really have the ground truth and the goal department. That's really important.
The actual transactions are end-to-end deterministic, essentially. Because it's it's the full data, because you have the storefront, the transaction, the payment gateway, and then the merchant's fulfillment of it, plus the tracking data all along the way. So it's it helps a lot to have a data set assembled first party.
And you can track on a long-term basis so that if customers dissatisfied, you can see that in their subsequent behavior.
We see the exactly reverse logistics in our parlance, returns in everyone else's, yes, and also chargebacks against the cards. So it's really the full life cycle of a transaction, which is fairly unique to have this. like in most other cases where companies have end-to-end data, it would be that they run one marketplace. Let's Amazon comes to mind, and therefore the demographics that are using it is the demographics using Amazon, which is probably a fair proxy to all of demographics, all people. But we have millions of individual URL stores that are like quite separate, and they have their own worlds, with their own language, their own aesthetics, and their own changes to their aesthetics over time. And anyway, so for all these reasons, it's I think we could put something together that no one could quite line up.
So Rich, I'm going to address this question to you, and then we'll shift into our where does this go at the limit. I've been watching Shopify's application of AI for a few years and just thinking about it, and I've come to the view that and I'm not saying this because Toby's here. I'm saying it because of how I think about the future of this technology. That at some level, 24 months from now, Shopify may be the most powerful AI company in the world. And here's why. If you believe that the future of machine intelligence is RL, like in other words, RL is a key piece. And in order to really flex RL's muscle, you need goals. And that, in other words, and if a key goal in this is like the key goal in commerce is to sell something, and so you need data, and in specific, you need goal data, and furthermore, you need as many of the antecedents to the goal as possible. And then you might say, well, then isn't that Amazon? But we also know that RL, the way to flex an RL muscle is through quite a bit of experimentation. And arguably if you take the degree of experimentation on Shopify relative to Amazon, it feels like there's so much more experimentation on Shopify than there is on Amazon. So if they have a vast amount of data, more experiments than anyone else with that data, and the end goal that, for example, Anthropic does not have end goal data, then doesn't it seem like if you were to try and pick what's the company that has the most key ingredients to exercise the power of RL, can you think of something better than Shopify?
I'm thinking you might have something there, Ajay. And the key thing is the experiments, because all the other companies could do experiments, let's say in their logistics chains or their everything, how they supply their customers. That with so many independent merchants, they'll effectively be doing vastly large numbers of experiments, and that seems unique. I think you may have something there, AJ.
All right. Well, I'll let you keep chewing on it and have the machine running in the background, and we'll go around. So I'm just going to mention the two other products. We won't go as deep into them like we do with SimGym. So one is Shopify Product Network.
This is major. I think it's a great example of how merchants can leverage Shopify scale, I think, to achieve just more as a merchant community on Shopify. Merchants will definitely know this pain point really, really well, but we all work so hard to get traffic to our stores, to our sites. And sometimes a customer actually bounces because they couldn't find a complementary product to add to their cart. And enter Product Network. What do you tell us about this? How does Product Network help merchants with conversion? What is this all about?
Yeah, Product Network is a stealthily amazing feature for conversion, mainly because for large retailers, they have always known if you have more products, the chances of a customer checking out is higher, purely out of the idea that if I'm looking for, let's say, homewares like a chair, I'm also maybe looking for a table because I'm a customer shopping for my home office. But how do you get a really full-fledged merchandising catalog and keep it up to date? That has been something that takes a lot of time and effort. Product Network solves that for you. So with just a click, you access the 3 million merchants on Shopify, or the millions of merchants on Shopify, And then you can basically tap in and say, hey, I'm a homeware store. I make chairs. I don't really make or want to source tables. Shopify, help me fill that category, right? And I'm in control. I can say, you know, I don't really love this brand, or, you know, I want specifically this category. And then automatically my online store will start to fill in the points that I want, whether it's empty search results, whether it's on collections, starts to fill with tables in my scenario. And the chances now of my customer not just finding my chairs, but also finding my chairs and these tables and making one nice big purchase for their home office increases.
This is collaborative entrepreneurship. It's collaborative. Like it's just like a completely new beginning for the platform, and of course totally opt-in. We will build like a lot of our AI capabilities are at play here to figure out how to perfectly merchandise this. You like the merchants are always in control of their own stores. Any of this only happens for areas where you have said, I would like this to be fleshed out by the Greater Shopify network, or here's the types of products that we would like to that I would like to see here. I only want products from other places show up past like the third row of my search results or something like this. We're going to ship all sorts of things depending on what we are going to hear, but what people would how people are thinking about it, and it's, I think, super exciting.
And the basic idea here is that you're a merchant, you're selling your thing. Let's say you're selling skateboards, and somebody's on your storefront. They're buying a skateboard, and then they want to buy a helmet. You don't sell helmets, and so that's again another disadvantage of being a small store. And so what they do is they use machine intelligence to go out into the world and identify someone who sells helmets that sort of fits within the ethos of your store, and then present it to the customer on your store's platform. So effectively filling in the gaps of products that you don't carry but your customers want. And that would be, you can imagine, a barrier to a small store, and also a very big job without something like machine intelligence to do this. So that's what they call Shopify Product Network. So it removes the scale economy disadvantage that small companies have. Second thing is the Sidekick Pulse, which I'm just doing a very coarse overview here. The main idea, you can think of it as giving next best action predictions to merchant owners. So, there's 100 things that a shop owner can do when they wake up in the morning, and most of the time, you probably do a suboptimal thing, and because there's just so many options of things you could do. And the idea of this is, what's the thing you could do that would most increase your ROI or your sales? Okay, so that's just three. We got SimGym, the Shopify Product Network, and a Sidekick Pulse as three examples of applications of machine intelligence that give small business owners a significant lift relative to
Okay, so let's talk
advantage.
about the first thing. This is probably my favorite feature of Sidekick, but to be honest, it's probably one of my favorites of the entire edition, which is Sidekick Pulse. I think one of the things that is incredible is a lot of people find value talking directly to Sidekick and having conversations. And now Sidekick is thinking on your behalf with all of the smarts that it has around knowing your store, understanding all of your data, understanding economic trends, all of Shopify's knowledge of commerce as well. And we package it and deliver insights at the right time. This is insane. And I actually have a couple pulses that I'm going to read because I think that this is like one of the fun things about this is that actually playing with it for staff stores. There's a lot of Shopify folk who actually have businesses and real ones. And so one of them is Andrew McNamara, who is one of the director of engineers here at Shopify, and he works directly on Sidekick. And so I did a pulse for him, a pulse poll last night. And this is what Sidekick said. It said, reactivate 55 one-time buyers with a personalized win-back campaign, Andrew. 55 customers made one purchase and never returned, leaving your repeat customer rate at just 10%. Typically, we see 20 to 30% repeat rates. And maple syrup is a consumable, and therefore customers should naturally reorder your product 2 to 3 months every time. And yet some of your buyers haven't been back. One customer made a reorder made a reorder of 5 purchases proving that you can have a product that has repeat purchases. Let's launch a personalized win-back email to these 55 one-time customers, offering a 15% discount. And then Sidekick went and drafted the discount and email for him, which is like, that insight is insane for your platform to come and nudge you.
So now we go to, where does this go at the limit? So this is just going to be reactions. We'll start with Neve, and then Suzanne, and then Sendel, and then Rich. And so we don't know anything about Toby's business. And so this will be totally naive. But let's just give our best shot of where we think this is going. And then at the end, invite Toby to react.
I think we should also trademark Tobify. I think that's quite a cool nickname too for the next Sidekick. But so echo everything around, just love it from a mission as well as kind of technical point of view, from leveraging leveling the playing field, but also leveraging the community of merchants in a win-win network effect way. And I think what all of this really enables is that kind of new age of affordable mass personalization versus that historic trade-off between scale and customization. So it enables that kind of personalized agent that we've discussed in prior episodes, but it's like a two-sided N-of-1 optimization, right? Because you can drive customization at the merchant level too. It's like you almost have log probs on a product versus token basis. And it's because it not only surfaces dynamic insights, but enables that single clip implementation in real time. And if it doesn't work, you can kind of just reverse it too. So for me, I think that's the ultimate end goal.
I'm kind of interested in where this goes in the far future in terms of that goal, or the objective function, or the reward function, or however you want to think about it. Because the thing is it's nice while people are kind of getting what they want, so they're able to get my product. But at what point do we start changing what the person actually wants themselves, and it starts to become a feedback loop where the AI gets so powerful that it's able to kind of addict the consumer to buying and buying more and more and more. And if how much they purchase is the only objective function, is there a worry that it might kind of go into something like a kind of dopamine addiction system? And so what I mean is maybe we should modify the objective function to have that plus some other goals of actually making the consumer happy in other ways. So it's just an interesting thing to think about.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. Sendel.
I'm going to paint a very positive future, I think, in contrast to what you were saying, Suzanne, which is I loved your vision that you put forward, Ajay, which is it was interesting to me. But I think there's one element of it that was missing, and I think that makes Shopify really intriguing to me. When you say Amazon or you have a large company, in some sense, they often control the decision levers at the end. So when you do RL or when you do anything, there's a very top-down aspect to everything. And I find it fantastically interesting that you have the benefits of scale, but you are always at some level at the mercy of the decision maker. Here is not your employee, it's your customer. So if I just play forward and if I said Shopify is going to be the leader in AI, if they were the leader in AI, I think it would push AI in a very different direction. It would push AI in the direction of what are the innovations in AI that decision makers find helpful to make the decisions they're going to make. Whereas I think if you had a company that owned all of its decisions, the natural profit motive pushes you towards what are the AI that's going to be able to make the decision for you. There's quite a different path here. And I, for one, would love to see Shopify be the leader in AI, because I think that is a direction of AI development that is, I think, we don't have enough muscle thrown behind. And I think it would lead to very different kinds of things, because it would lead to asking the questions such as not what are the decisions an algorithm can autonomously make, but what are the decisions that something can help a person who is making that decision. And I think that's just a very different product development. I was sold by your vision, Ajay, and I think the architecture of Shopify seems to also be pushing it in a very intriguing direction.
So, Sendel, can you just expand on this a bit so that listeners can follow? What you described was two trajectories of AI research. and just give a sense of what would be like canonical research questions on each of those two vectors.
Yeah, let's take I'll make it very tangible, like product mix. Like I have a store that sells, I don't know, pick something, I don't know, coffee shop. And what kinds of pastries should I have as a product mix? Now, if you had that and you had a Starbucks, for example, that was running its own system doing RL, it's going to make those end decisions. And its ideal would be an algorithm that said, okay, in this area, we should have croissants. In this area, in this time, we should have. So you're going to move the decision-making, hope to move the decision-making to the algorithm. In Shopify, if you built a similar thing, there's going to be a coffee shop owner, and your thing is going to suggest things. That person's going to look at it and say, I like that suggestion. Or, well, no, my customers have been telling me this. And so because the end decision maker has the power in this situation, the arc of development will then be an algorithm that tries to aid that decision maker. That could be good or bad. Maybe it should be autonomous. But I think actually in these decisions, there's so much information that sits in the tacit one-on-one communication that the shop owner has with customers that I actually think this is a good development. So then you would look at algorithms that didn't say, what's the best thing for autonomously deciding whether to put croissants here or not, but what's the thing that can help this person with the kind of decisions they're struggling with about croissants or about whatever. That's just a very different product. And I think that's super interesting.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand this and clarify for our listeners, because I think this is touching on a foundational thing. In other words, and you could imagine a different stream of research papers coming out from the Shopify team versus the Anthropic team or whatever, is that you're just, when you gave the Starbucks example, the implication was the reason that you'd be making autonomous croissant decisions is because Starbucks is a large organization, and that I think you were implying that even though there's a local Starbucks owner, a franchisee owner or whatever, that many of the decisions are made higher up the chain. So they're not exploiting the local information. So in other words, the smallness of many Shopify owners changes the incentive for the AI builders of what problem they're trying to solve. And in one case, you're trying to build AIs that optimize autonomous decision-making. And in the other case, you're trying to build AIs that optimize centaur or human machine. Is that the right way to think of it?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So in other words, people at Shopify would have a different set of performance benchmarks, like a different class of benchmarks. They would be benchmarks of human performance where humans are aided by AIs, whereas all the traditional AI companies have benchmarks that are machine-only benchmarks.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a whole work stream here that until you mentioned your thing, I hadn't thought of, but like Shopify is at the center of it because at some level, everyone else in this game is sitting either at the autonomous level or just at the pure tech stack level. Like I'm just building an LLM. I'm just trying to go against these eval benchmarks. But here you have somebody sitting at this exact juncture. And look, I'm not trying to say it's good. I mean, there are probably some things where you just wish you could autonomously say, look, I don't want to have to persuade everybody of this is the right thing to do. But, you get the good with the bad. Ultimately, your market structure forces you to be in that persuasive aiding structure. And I think that's actually good for the ecosystem as a whole because we have so many people on this autonomous side. I don't think we have enough counterbalance on this other side.
In my mind, just very quickly, that's the antidote to the shop slop, right? In that rather than converging to the same mean, you have that diversity, but it also goes back to what I said at the start of Shopify has real N of one data as opposed to synthetic data, which all the other labs are having to buy. And that's what causes that convergence and average and commoditization. So I think it's a really key point.
Okay, let me just go one level deeper, Sendel, with you on this, which is for our listeners, because you've spent so much time thinking about human decision-making. Can you give an example of the kind of, when you said this could take AI research in a different direction, can you give an example of the nature of that research trajectory in terms of what's an example, either representation or something that people on that trajectory would do differently than people on the traditional trajectory.
Yeah, like I'll give an example from something that many people, or at least some people, feel is going to be automated, and I think I'm a little less convinced of. So if you look at coding copilots and you say, oh, look, right now they do well on this much on benchmarks, it'll eventually be all vibe coding. Take that as a given. But let's just look at where we are today. Right now, if you look at all the metrics, there's quite a high rate of override. Like most code suggestions are not accepted, most code things are not. So now there's a fork in the road. You can go in the direction of saying, how do I get this thing to just be able to code itself? Or you could say, okay, what would it mean to make the coding copilot better for interaction? Well, it would mean things like this. Its errors should be more transparent to the human. It should be the kind of thing that a human can look at more easily and find the errors quickly. It should allow more back and forth and say, you keep making this kind of error, my style preferences. It would allow more at the level of, you're not trying to drive down the coding error rate to zero. You're living with the fact that it's going to be overridden anyway at a pretty high rate. What I need to do is to make that interaction more valuable. And coding is at least a very precise activity. Take another activity, like you were saying about a really interesting example. I'd like someone to tell me what I should tell my friends on Friday. That's actually an idea generation activity. So if you push algorithms in that direction, you don't want them to generate correct ideas. You want them to generate a diversity of ideas. Who cares if it gives 3 and you reject 2 because you're like, that's bad. It's like, oh, I love that one. That's, again, a very different metric. You're not optimizing for goodness, correctness. You're actually optimizing more for variance. So there's just a lot that you would do differently once you accept that actually the output of this object is not the thing that's going to be the final thing. It's going to be the thing that's going to aid somebody in that thing. It's just to close another thought. Here's a different thing you do that right now very few people are doing. You'd care a lot more about the algorithm making errors that are in people's blind spots, and care not at all about the algorithm making errors that are purely visible to people. So you would really work hard to get rid of these errors and be like, I don't know, like that's fine. And in fact, seeing the algorithm make errors might be a good thing as it kind of gets people engaged. Hey, I have some value add here. So that's just not a thing we have. Like we don't have errors, the kind that would be caught anyway versus the kind. So there's just a lot that kind of immediately explodes once you view things through this lens. And I think the field has been pretty slow on this front because I do think, I'm not saying that other goal is not valuable. Obviously, that's a fantastic goal, but both goals are valuable.
And I might get some of the details wrong, but like for New Rips at New Rips like a couple of weeks ago, there was at least one part was about the discovery that all the models trained like different foundation models trained by different labs are quite convergent in their answers, and that human populations display significantly more creativity on the same grounds than all the LLMs, even though they are supposed to not share a lot of data they're trained independently of each other. So I think your point is a very, very good one, and probably something that the labs really should be wrestling with, because like it would be the mother of all unintentional consequences if we are we are increasing the net quality of intelligence token in the world and reducing at the same rate the net amount of creativity that comes to bear. That would be very, 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 very sad.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So if I may, like just like the so the product network is sort of interesting because it's like a recommender system that's just like old school. The SimGym is so interesting because of what we have a conversation about. Pulse is sort of your background process. Let's think really hard, invest a lot of generate ideas, then investigate them agentically, and if you find something, bring it out. All of these things are kind of amazing as a supporting mechanism. All of them exist to create insights and like assist people, and Sidekick always runs in front of you and is like assistive technology with human in the loop, right? This is a little bit like it's convenient because that happens to be the right implementation that's actually essentially ideal from a experience perspective, but it's also kind of deeply philosophical here because there's just like a sorting in our minds on ideological grounds that like computers work for humans. This is just, do not, like, the very concept of e-commerce having started at like making busy people have to enter their address and their credit card with their thumbs, like, and just like, is clearly this is something that computers could have known and should have stored, and we should have built the infrastructure to the point that people can make decisions at a high level and then let the computer do the computing and data transfers. We find even like having to repeat yourself in entering your name between your address and then your shipping address and then maybe your credit card again to be unbelievable violations of a code of conduct between machine and human. So this has gone like 20 years of our history. This is doubly true now. Like, we didn't think it mattered that much because this started out as an eccentricity, and I think is now actually load bearing in our AI journey because, again, the AI helps the entrepreneurs. That's the point. So that's important. I'm gonna just, like, because of a subject matter expert, I should say that since we already brought up NeurIPS here, or I guess I did, we did share a good deal of our information about how we train the foundation models here that are predicting merchant behavior and also next business event predictions. It uses an architecture called HSTU, which we worked with Liquid AI and NVIDIA to build proper kernels for, and like to get them to get the architecture up to speed. It's been extremely game changing for us because you can essentially train recommenders, but also autoaggressive next business event prediction. Just add compute, like, with all the same scaling laws that we are observing in normal transformers, and that's been like underneath all these breakthroughs, and why we think we can deliver the quality on all these things that we want to see. We think like these next business event, HSTU, potentially like maybe some follow-on architectures from this core idea is going to be incredibly it's going to be a lot of people that talk about this in the future, just because what it does inside of Shopify, where we just hopped on this train a little bit early, has been remarkable. And the researchers in Shopify have done incredibly good work going against the grain a bit.
Rich, let me give you a chance to weigh in here, your vision of where this might go.
Okay, I'm thinking about this a little bit. What's the limit in e-commerce? And maybe the first decision is whether you want to be centralized or decentralized, where like Amazon would be the centralized example. There's one organization, and Shopify is the decentralized example. So I don't know which one of those is better. Let's leave that aside. And because anyway, let's focus on the decentralized one. And has many advantages, including the diversity of trials that we mentioned earlier. But if you're going to go decentralized, there's still choices. Are you going to be decentralized around the merchant, or are you going to be decentralized around the customer? And in other weeks, other months, we've talked about decentralization around the customer. Like, each customer should have a personal assistant that knows their desires and will suggest new products to them. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think also decentralization around the merchant makes sense. Now, in a sense, is what Spotify is doing. It's providing advice and tools to the merchants. But the merchants themselves, their decisions, they're left to them to make. They are advising the merchants. Well, instead, the merchants could be provided with whole decision-making complete systems that have experience and learn from their experience and are fully intelligent in their own decentralized selves. And that would be an interesting model we haven't talked about yet. And okay, now both of these decentralized models could operate at once. Like, you could have some decentralization around the customer, some decentralization around the merchants, And in many ways, this is better because, as I think AJ mentioned, the merchant has other goals other than making money. They're also idiosyncratic people that have their desires and for how their life will evolve. And I think those will not be exactly the same as money. I think a good model would be you have local things around the customer, local things around the merchants, and the Shopify is in the middle that's trying to serve everybody, but in a sort of supporting role. And in this way, they might become the most powerful AI company on the planet.
This is not our goal. I really doubt it. I think what we would be delighted is to contribute interesting and valuable things and contextualize how to get how to cause the most amount of entrepreneurial activity supported here. I'm somewhat, the tech industry has a a communicative aesthetic around changing the world that I find we actually just want to take a corner of a world that we care about and make it a little bit better every day. That's it's if there are changes that are coming downstream from that, then that's a side effect of something that should be clearly good. We find that more people self-actualizing is a good thing. And in our case, where people do this by building businesses, which then employ we're talking about millions of merchants, but they're employing 20 millions of people, right? It's just there's a lot of economics and valuable side effects here that exist. 60-70% in every country of people work for small businesses. They are a leaky bucket. If they don't have opportunities to be created, you end up with economic issues that then mean we definitely can't afford data centers. So it's just it's. I sorry to jump in there, but it's really not about building the most powerful AI company. I have plenty of friends who are doing this, so they can work that out between them. I'm trying to figure out how to make it all the gifts that we're getting from the labs maximally valuable to people I really care about.
This attitude of helping the world fulfill its desires and its dreams. I think this is exactly the attitude we would want in the company that ends up becoming most powerful.
Okay, for the people who are listening here, if you were to think of what's one thing that will be surprising, in other words, new and surprising, as this things like these, like SimGym and all these things roll out, that will make commerce online different a year from now than today in an unpredictable way. So something that most people wouldn't expect. And so Neve, we'll start with you, then Suzanne. And this is, of course, for all the listeners, from people who know nothing about commerce, but are just thinking about putting machine intelligence into processes. And then Toby will end with you with just what you would say. But Neve, and then Suzanne, Rich, and Sendel.
I think it's already there with Pulse, in that the great thing that they've done is not just kind of surface bugs and fix things, but generate insights and give the vendors these aha moments of, you may not be aware, but this customer hasn't, or this bucket of customers haven't made a repeat purchase. Let me draft an email to send out with a 15% discount to win them back. And if you click here, it's all automatically done. I think if you said that even 2 years ago, people would think it's sci-fi. So I think it's a brilliant empowerment mechanism. And the one thing I would say very briefly, because we haven't covered so far, is I said it to Toby when we were in Toronto last year. I am continuously blown away for a company that is 20 years old with 20,000 employees, how agile Shopify is. It is continuously been working early with young, unproven startups. It's always been amongst the first to experiment with models, often on or even before release date, and rapidly find a way to overcome all those hurdles to adoption that most of the big corporates have. And I think it helps its leadership are all still active engineers. So I think that's more my closing statement than anything particularly insightful on the prediction front.
Thanks, Niamh. Suzanne, and then Rich.
Well, I'm interested in the sort of consumer behavior side of this and how much of their agency people are actually going to farm out to their own AI assistants in the future. So one way you could think is maybe if Shopify is solving the problem like from the top down, maybe there could be a product from the bottom up as well that's direct to consumer and helps them make the buying choices based on the simulation of their own behavior. So this is kind of an interesting way to think about it, is if we can simulate consumer behavior really, really well with the tools you're building, maybe that could be a product to help the consumer get some time back in their life too. Their AI assistant could surprise them when they get home with a purchase from an artisan merchant that they would love.
Thanks, Suzanne. Rich.
Well, I'm wondering if come back in a year or 6 months and if I still have this reflex to go to Amazon because it's so standardized. And if I can get past that into the niche retailers, that would be exciting, interesting.
Sendal.
Since I was very positive last time, let me say something negative. My 1 year, 2 year out sort of thing is actually a genuine fear, which is, I think, Toby, you started off by pointing out the sort of the hope we had for the web that like, oh, now everyone can. And in a way, that hope persists in that, like, you know, not just Etsy. It really has opened up consumer to small business channels in a way that never could have existed before. It's just fantastic. But now that search is sort of being replaced by LLM search, and Toby, you pointed out the correlation between these models. But I think there's a deeper point, which is I think these models are any one model is remarkably homogeneous and lacks a lot of breadth. I think there's a sort of hidden force in LLM-driven search towards, like Rich, you said, if I could move away from Amazon, it's going to be much easier for me to move away from Amazon than a language model trained on this data. And I think we're creating at that search point a kind of, there's a market structure issue, you're pushing towards the big, but there's also just a real homogenization issue. Like the tangled madness of the web, which was fantastic, you can already see it. It's just getting shockingly homogenized. And I think there's a knock-on effect, which is, what's the other way I found small individual idiosyncratic things? Like I'm into espresso, so there are people who have really into it, who have blogs or whatever, and they're like really into it. In the old equilibrium, well, what did they get for their time? They got search traffic and they got some ego boost. Maybe they got money, maybe they didn't, whatever. Now their content is up, quickly in a suggested, summarization thing, maybe with a link, maybe not, but that's hardly satisfying. Who's going to keep producing that? So you're pushing this market towards this you're creating this homogenization at the key point where people went out and found things. And so that would be my 1-2 year fear, is that we're actually sort of destroying market structure.
Toby, last 60 seconds, yours.
I mean, the centralization and decentralization conversation is to me, it's the most central of my entire career. Like I cannot actually name a place other than commerce where the decentralization has actually held on or even was thriving. And I can tell you it was a lot of work. I think it's simply that it can be done, but it requires people with sufficient resources, making it a lifelong pursuit, and holding just keeping doggedly after, because it's never going to be ideal. It would be vastly simpler for us to just put it all together and make a marketplace and then charge rent, right? That's definitely not what we want to do. But I am somewhat fatalistic about it. If AI is going to lead to that kind of thing, and everyone we converge on 100% personal shoppers run through OpenAI, and that's that, then Shopify is no longer needed, and I gave it my best, and that would not be the outcome I wanted. But it's vastly preferable to me to die to technological progress as a company rather than to a bad decision I made, right? So let's put. So I see I have control over certain things, and I'm gonna I think I described how I'm going to get Shopify to kind of build as much as possible, to get as quickly as possible value into the decentralized vision. Because the counterfactual idea here is that we are actually going to realize the web of the 90s. It was a lot of effort to make delightful web experiences. It's now trivial. In fact, the amount of creativity, especially if LLMs are going to be somewhat retrograde in creativity, that just puts an even higher premium to the creativity tokens created by real humans, which then very clearly gives everyone a delightful role in the whole thing. And everyone gets to be as creative as they can be with a data center with agents realizing all these ideas for them. And this could actually lead to an incredible Cambrian explosion of the kind of quirky and zany and fun web that we liked in the past, or that is just a delight when you encounter it in some niches. And so, and then inside of these worlds, there is often, it just turns out that transactional commerce is the most accessible form of entrepreneurship and the most real relationship that doesn't, rely on, any kind of third-party deals of attention or algorithmic RL factors to, hack attention. We find that, but there's a lot of people make a lot of consumerism, and I think that's a valid criticism. But consumerism exists not because people like stuff so much. It's because people hate the stuff they get, and that actually depended on the channels. And what usually happens on Shopify is people create the sort of 1,000 true fans small business that builds the perfect thing for people that they actually are delighted for. And there is definitely a hope here that there's sort of agentic commerce world, which definitely is going to hit fully on next year, is actually going to be able to find those true products and actually that are specifically fantastic for people, and actually make it more tractable to make more small businesses, because we are going to broaden the aperture on how many products actually can find their market fit, because this is becoming much more managed and facilitated for these models. So just to end on a hopeful note.
Yes, thank you, Toby. And maybe part of that hopeful response is Suzanne's suggestion of agents. The reason we end up like Rich, or using the language models is because we're lazy on search. Like, search is expensive; it's cognitively expensive, and Suzanne's agents take away that cost for the person, and that might reopen up access to a much more diversified search if it's agents doing it rather than people using a language model.
You will be happy to hear that all our training is happening on lifetime value of customers, not on transactional value, which is a huge sign that people are getting a lot of value, because repeat purchases are just the biggest signal possible. So
that's Rich, great for us in future discussions on goals. Because that's very different, lifetime value versus a transaction. Toby, this has been excellent. Thank you very much for taking the time. Really a pleasure to talk to you on behalf of all of us here.
Thank you for letting me join.
Thank you, Toby.
Bye-bye.
And that's our show for today. Thanks to Rich, Sendel, Neve, and Suzanne, and a special thanks to our guest today, Toby. We've also posted links to our hosts and guest social media feeds and web pages in the show notes, as well as our podcast webpage located online at insights.intrepidgp.com/podcast. Thanks everyone for listening.
The views, opinions, and information expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Intrepid Growth Partners. This content is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as financial, investment, or legal advice.